once was a scientist. He abandoned his family to delve into the secrets of Coral. His work yielded a carnival of horrors, augmentation surgery included. But there was another scientist. He took his colleagues' sins upon himself and set it all ablaze. Died with no regrets. There's a lesson in this story. Once something's alive, it doesn't die easy. 621. Story time's over.
See how far they can fly. On borrowed wings.
When it comes to thinking about developers in the industry that continues to innovate and show why they are some of the best that they can offer, I'd say one of the best examples is FromSoftware. Legends within the action RPG genre, they've shown on several occasions why they are pioneers and a studio that should be held in high regard. From Bloodborne to Elden Ring, they continue to innovate and enthrall audiences and gain a following more so than ever before. Which is why in December of 2022, they announced a return of a franchise that no one expected. Enter Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon. The level of excitement and hype this trailer got was extraordinary. Despite it being a more niche franchise, with FromSoftware's newfound following, an Armored Core was ripe with being able to garner old audiences and new audiences alike. Though this did make me question, how long of a history of FromSoftware's lineup am I really aware of?
Well, Spectre, maybe I can help you out there, huh?
Oh, Mr. CHB. Good to see you.
Likewise, my good friend, likewise.
So, what brings you here?
Well, I couldn't help but overhear how you don't know much of FromSoftware's previous history.
Well, I mean, I know as far as back as Demon Souls, but if you could teach me more, I'd love to hear it.
Very well. I'll keep this brief, as I possibly can. Mind you, the Armored Core series has had a long, complicated history, and has various standalone games that kind of jump in the middle of the mainline entries. But for the sake of brevity, we'll just focus on the mainline entries, shall we? 1997 saw the release of Armored Core 1 on the PlayStation 1 gaming console by FromSoftware. Armored Core 2 was a launch title for the PlayStation 2 in 2000, and a direct sequel to that game, Armored Core 2 Another Age, was released the very next year. The release of Armored Core 3 in 2002 would be a reboot for the franchise. Last Raven, a direct sequel to Armored Core 3, would come out in 2005. This would be the conclusion of the original PlayStation trilogy for Armored Core. In 2006, Armored Core 4 would be released for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, marking the debut of the series for the Xbox console. Armored Core 5's release in 2012 on the PS3 and 360 took the series back to the way that the original games played in a more traditional style. While 2013 had the release of the standalone title Armored Core Verdict Day, for the next many years there would not be an Armored Core release all the way up to today, 2023, when Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon was released. Whew! I think that's the crux of it. At least for the mainline entries, of course.
I see. I didn't know there was such a long history.
No, not a lot of people do unless you were a big gamer in the 90s and really into games like Armored Core. But that being said, with this new release, I think a lot of newer fans will be very excited to discover this title.
And in some ways, they did achieve that, having an all-time peak of over 150,000 players on Steam, surpassing both Sekiro Shadows Die Twice and Dark Souls 3. However, with this kind of attention, there's bound to be those that didn't get to play the game to the fullest because it's too hard, and easy mode.
Yeah, bunch of ponies.
However, despite all that, being a newbie to the franchise myself, I can't lie when I say that I was a bit nervous going in. But now that I've put in at least 30 hours into the game, I can confidently say I'm a fan now. What we got was yet another banger by FromSoftware and my definitive choice for Game of the Year. It is a mecha fantasy through and through, and I absolutely love it.
Well, I guess my work here is done. I shall let you continue with the rest of the video, buddy. Best of luck.
Thank you, Mr. CHB. Always a pleasure to see you around, brother.
Absolutely, my friend. It was a real pleasure, and I appreciate you bringing me on board. And could you hurry up and collect your feet pick stash? It's really distracting me.
Wait, what? I don't have that kind of stash over there.
Ha 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 ha! Made you look.
That cold-hearted bastard. But enough talk. Let's have a look at exactly why Armored Core has found its new love from me, and why it's the newest, closest game to a masterpiece since Elden Ring. Yes, I mean that. Step foot on the world of Rubicon with me, as this is my love letter to Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. If there's one thing FromSoftware is always capable of succeeding in, is fantastic locales, visuals, world building, the whole 9 yards. The world of Rubicon gives that feeling of disarray, and what's left of a previous civilization after a massive natural disaster, and what happens when it's consumed in total war. The variety of Rubicon's locales is crazy. You got your tundras, deserts, underground caverns, and technological marvels that just look amazing. The skyboxes, the colors, visuals, all of which complement the game and the tone it's setting and the lore it presents. Each environment is really good looking. While it's not as diverse as, say, Elden Ring, it's still great looking nonetheless. I always appreciate video games that can tell a story just by the world around you. It really gets you invested. Now, the one thing I want to comment on the most though is just the interactivity of the world, because it's fascinating to say the least. Imagine if you go out in a desert and you see this ginormous walker in the distance that's constantly trying to shoot you down. Imagine the idea of being able to climb onto that and climb up higher and higher to take it out. That's exactly what you can do in Armored Core. The game is filled with set pieces like this, which leads me to my next and favorite talking point that I am so excited to talk about. And that is the mecha fantasy of this game. Sci-fi has taught me one important thing. Giant robots are awesome. Seriously, what's better than those? Absolutely nothing. And Armored Core understands this in every way. Easily the most marketed aspect of the game is the fast-paced mecha-style gameplay. Before we talk about the game itself, I want to talk about the game's performance, as that is something I want to focus on with newer and newer titles that I cover. A game having a solid performance is the most important aspect of any game you can possibly think of. You can make a fantastic game from start to finish all you want, but if it runs like shit, no one's going to want to play it regardless. Which is why I am super happy to say that performance for this game is downright flawless. I've been getting consistent 60 frames per second on my Series X despite so much stuff happening on screen. I've had 2 occasions where I thought I would get frame dips just because of so much that was just happening on screen, but no, it's been a stable 60 FPS with some frame dips at the beginning, but overall, a solid performance. But with that out of the way, let's get into the gameplay. It's amazing, it's fast-paced, it requires strategy, and for you to constantly keep moving on your way to victory. The majority of the strategy, though, comes from the expertly crafted variety of different mech pieces, weapons, armor, etc. My favorite part of the entire game is the unending customization of your armor core, with different head pieces, body pieces, arms, legs, weapons at your disposal, boosters, generators, and the like. The possibilities are just buck wild. And what mech would be complete without a few wonderful toys? These consist of rifles, some machine guns, shotguns, machine guns, plasma guns, explosives, missile launchers, plasma launchers, needle launchers, holy hell, shields, different pulse armors, plasma swords, plasma drills, and of course, my lovely penetrator. My favorite set, though, being the gun, the plasma sword, and plasma launcher combo. Everything dies. However, with the amount of customization in this, that doesn't mean you can just put on whatever works willy-nilly. There will be specific requirements needed, and you don't want to exceed the load on your armor cores. There's a reason why this game is called a spreadsheet simulator, because creating your mechs takes a lot of thinking. And it's this game is where you'll realize it's time to get started on your build. There's plenty to choose from being a nimble glass cannon to be a walking tank, from focus on offensive to defensive. It's important to find out which parts will benefit you for each encounter. This also translates to the mission designs as well. There will be missions that will require you to change up your build and keep experimenting. Otherwise, you're going to have a terrible time. This is something that I loved about Elden Ring, is that it had the ability to always change your build on the fly, and it's honestly just as good here. There were so many occasions that, because the game encourages making separate builds, that I constantly was finding more ways to make great mechs while still looking pretty good on the battlefield. I'm only scratching the surface on the customization too. There's also different paint jobs that you can do, create your own logos, there's even more modules you can put on your own mech to make it overall stronger by doing arenas, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk about the mission design though. You get a large set of missions to do per chapter at a total of 5 chapters. And I was surprised the amount of missions that you do and the content they provide. These consist of taking outposts, collecting data, holdout missions, etc. And then of course there's the main missions as well. These continue the main story, and it's important to do as many missions as possible, as each mission will give you credits depending on how well you performed, so you can get more items. I recommend doing the side missions as much as you can. That way you get the maximum amount of credits possible. The enemy variety is pretty good too, ranging from small drones to other armor cores to massive warships. The main missions though, oh boy, those are where the game gets really good. The set pieces each one of them provide are just beautiful to the human eye, and there's not a single one where I felt like I was getting bored. My favorite being a mission out in the snow where you fight a giant ice worm. If you have other NPCs to fight with you, while you shoot at it, its armor, it dwindles it down. It's such a fantastic mission, and I'd love to do that again and again.
All or nothing.
Speaking of which, you can though. You can replay missions over and over to your heart's content, per chapter, so you can keep getting credits to buy more pieces. But, by far, the best mission of the game is when you take flight and take out massive warships with another character, Cinder Carla, and you just go from ship to ship, and just fighting and destroying them one by one. It honestly gave me Titanfall 2 vibes, and I loved it. It made you feel like such a badass from beginning to end, all adding to a boss fight for the cherry on top. Speaking of bosses, there's plenty of them in this game, ranging from other armor cores to the standard set piece bosses that FromSoftware is known for. These fights are incredible. One of my favorites is probably Balteus. He's the ultimate gateway boss in Armored Core. This is the boss that will test you whether or not if you're fit for the game that awaits you. If you want to beat the game, beat him and test your mettle. Otherwise, you get filtered hard. And if that wasn't enough, There's also arenas and online multiplayer. I haven't played online though, but let's talk about the arenas, as honestly, they're really fun to do. This is where you fight specific armor cores from the characters in the story, all the way to the best of the best. Doing so not only increases your rank, but also gives you these power modules that allow for more build and loadout customization, like I mentioned earlier. I was just honestly shocked by the amount of content that was put into this in the 30 hours of me playing it. Oh, and another thing, the music. Awesome!
I will stop you and the siren. Carrying our shared resolve.
So, what we get out of all this is a beautiful mecha fantasy that feels similar to the days of old, while also adding From's new Souls flair they've built up for years. And it's honestly worth the price of admission alone. You'll constantly have something to do and something to complete. There's never a dull moment, and it's a fantastic experience from beginning to end. Now, with all this being said, let's talk about what Armored Core 6 is actually about. I'm gonna start this off by saying that Armored Core 6 has a damn good story. It's a good tale about what happens when several nations are consumed in war over a product. Before we start, as always, spoiler territory. So go on ahead and jump to this timestamp to avoid being spoiled, as I always talk about the story in depth to the best of my ability. That being said, let's get into it. The start out is simple. You're a mercenary, number 621, codename Raven, and you are sent into the planet of Rubicon to collect a resource called Coral, which could be used as an energy source and data conduit. Your handler, Walter, smuggles you into Rubicon and tasks you with finding the Coral, as it could be a new source of technological advancement for the human race. But it was also known for causing a cataclysmic event on Rubicon known as the Fires of Ibis, which engulfed the planet in flames. 5 decades later, sources of Coral are found, and the corporations all go to find and control the Coral, regardless of the danger it potentially could cause. You will meet and come around people from various corporations who continue to assist you, as well as those who will stand against you, like the PCA. After you join forces with the other companies and take on the PCA, they withdraw from Rubicon, but the victory is sadly short-lived, as tension between the other companies begin to arise, which has you and those companies continue to wage war over the Coral. All this while you have an AI sweet-talking you in your head.
Raven, there's something you need to know. That friend Walter mentioned. The comms database has no record of the conversation he just told you about.
This is Air, a Rubiconian who was able to connect with you after a Coral explosion on one of your missions. She tells you a lot about the past events or concerns that she has for the people that you work with. It's honestly kind of a interesting relationship, almost similar to Master Chief and Cortana in Halo.
I am but a single wave, born from the Coral Tide. A Rubiconian without a body.
All while she's trying to help her family and her people. Before we talk about one of the more important aspects of the story, I want to talk about the characters, as surprisingly, there's some good ones here. My favorite used to be Rusty for a time, as he'd always call me Buddy, which was the nicest thing I've ever heard, till the bastard betrayed me, and I had to kill him. Rest in piss, Buddy. I thought you were my friend. But I'd say my two favorites are Cinder Carla and Walter. They both have their motivations, be it positive or negative, whether it is to want to destroy the Coral or use it to advance technology for their company in particular. Sometimes you can hear the desperation in Walter's voice, as he genuinely cares for you at times.
61! Ah, damn it. Not like this.
Even characters like Air, she wants to help her people and release the Coral for the better. There's surprisingly a lot of lore for this world, and characters that you get invested in pretty quickly. And then we get to the fun bit. The game has multiple endings given the choices that you make and the characters you kill. These endings reminded me of the 3 main endings from Elden Ring, where it drastically changed how the story goes from there depending on what you do. This level of freedom for players is always appreciated, and it's something that From are legendary at achieving, and it's no different here. I chose the one where you stop air and ram the Xylem, a giant frickin' city ship, holy hell, into the vascular plant, which destroys the coral, and it shoots out a massive explosion. I will not let AI control me! But it turns out that's the bad ending. Strange. If you choose to side with air, though, you protect the coral, kill Carla and Walter, and create a world where coral and Rubicon can coexist. I will say there's surprisingly also a third ending that I haven't gotten into yet. But that's the interesting part. There's so much more in this story that if I really wanted to dive into it, like extensively, I would talk about it for maybe 4 hours. That's how extensive and good it is. Armored Core's story is one of war, and one where your moral compass swings on whether it's to get the job done or fight for the betterment of others. Along with a lot of lore that you could probably spend hours watching Vlada video for. And your choices and the missions that you pick changes that for better or worse. Much like a raven, no matter the choice, you continue to soar. And that is Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. A game that I didn't know what to expect going in, but coming out of it, I am now a converted fan. I'm Squidward, tasting that Armored Core Krabby Patty with a hint of Fires of Abyss hot sauce, and I'm running right back into the vault, playing it constantly. I was shocked at how good this game is, and it shows that From Software are not one-trick ponies like some people claim. They continue to show why they're some of the best in the industry, and how they pretty much carried it on their back. Hard. I really hope that this game reignites that spark for From Software that they want to bring the franchise back further and further into generations. Cause this game deserves it, and it also deserves your attention and money. You need to own this game. It's one ride that's definitely worth it, but one that comes with a warning that this game isn't for everyone. And if you devote your time to understanding it, learning its mechanics and all that jazz, I guarantee it'll be well worth it, because it definitely was for me. And that is my love letter to Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Feed the fire. Let the last cinders burn.
Raven? You see it too, don't you? The voices of the coral. Currents coursing across Rubicon.